Hi, I'm Ben Reppond. I want to talk about currency. The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States is in charge of the printing of currency. They used to print currency. Today they actually only print currency to replace currency that goes out of circulation because the bills are worn or lost or something. But the amount of printed currency that's in circulation, I don't think has expanded or expanded much. So where does the expansion of currency come from? Somewhere along the line, in the age of computers, the amount of currency, the expansion of currency happened digitally. So the throwing of trillions of dollars into the system happened with the press of a button. So the dollar bills that we have, yes, were printed, and yes, they represent that, but the amount of dollars in circulation, I think most of them are digital. This chart shows, this is a Federal Reserve chart, it shows the dollars that are in circulation. This goes back to about 1981, 1980, and shows the expansion of currency. And you can see it goes up and up and up until you get to the right end of the chart, and then you see that gray line about a half inch from the end of the screen. You see that, and then what happened? The Federal Reserve began to expand currency at an unbelievable rate, and at a rate that it hadn't seen for 40 years. Matter of fact, it's never seen anything like this. So I circled it in red to just show you the amount of money that has expanded in circulation. The number, it's now about $22 trillion that is in circulation. A lot of expansion has happened in the last 2 years. Where did that money go? That's probably a subject that I don't know enough about, and I'm certainly not going to tackle that one. It probably is even political. But we do know this, published by the Federal Reserve Board, the expansion of currency is very high. If we go back about 6 months from today, today is February 22nd, 2022, we go back 6 months ago, maybe August of 2021, the rate of inflation in our country was higher than normal, but not extremely high. The rate of inflation has expanded rapidly since about that time, about August of 2021. Prior to that time, I could see this chart, and a lot of that increase had already taken place. And I was saying back then, we are headed for inflation. We were not in a period of high inflation yet, but it's only a matter of time where this was going to happen, where the expansion of currency is going to show up in inflation. There are more dollars out there, they become worth less. It works that way in everything. So here we are today, high inflation, seemingly going higher, and more dollars in circulation. So I thought I'd do this segment on historical circulation, or historical dollars, to show what has happened over time. So this is a picture of $2 bills. If you were to go to a merchant and hand either one of these to the merchant, they would accept it. However, there is a difference. There's an inherent difference. Not an intrinsic value difference, but there is a difference. The one on top has at the very top of it the words silver certificate. The one at the bottom says Federal Reserve note. Well, Federal Reserve implies, those are good sounding words. They don't mean anything. It means it came from the Federal Reserve, and it's neither federal nor reserve. The word note implies that it has, it's redeemable. It has value. In 1878, the dollar was authorized to have the words silver certificate on it. That lasted from 1878 to 1964, I believe. And then they stopped putting the word silver certificate. You may say, what does that mean? Silver certificate means that, and this is what they intended, because in 1878, people were carrying silver or coins in their possession, and it was cumbersome. And so they came up with an arrangement that if you'll give us your silver, we will give you a silver certificate, and that certificate can always be redeemed in silver. So you can exchange it. It's an assurance that it is backed actually by silver. So the equivalent, whatever the price is, let's just say it were, just pick a number and say it was $5 an ounce. You would take 5 of these, but you actually could get silver for it. So they stopped that in 1964 and started printing the Federal Reserve note. And as such, since 1964, this dollar is not actually backed by silver. It's really not backed by anything. Now, we do have gold in deposit in Fort Knox and in the basement of the vaults of the New York Federal Reserve building. And I don't know where else they have it, but it's reported that we have about 8,000 tons of gold in reserve in this country. Now, that has never been audited. They don't seem to want to audit it or to release that data. So, being the skeptic that I am, I wonder if we really have 8,000 tons. What happened before, this is an interesting kind of history lesson. What happened before, our gold reserves were depleted about 50% from 1944 to 1971. So in that period of time, from 1944, we agreed with other nations, 44 nations in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. We agreed, it's called the Bretton Woods Accord. We agreed with them that we would be the world reserve currency, and we still are. They asked for one condition. The condition is that we would back our currency with gold, our gold and silver, hard assets. And we agreed to that. So in other words, you could exchange those dollars for hard assets. After World War II, what was happening is we were buying goods from Europe, mostly. And they were accumulating more and more and more dollars. So they had the idea, smart of them, to bring those dollars to the U.S. and exchange them for the gold that supposedly backed them. And so the Netherlands and Germany and France and I don't know what other countries, I know those 3 in particular, they put ships, they put dollar bills in whatever denomination, physical dollars, this is before digital dollars, physical dollars on ships, sent them to the U.S. and exchanged them for gold. Load those ships up with an equivalent amount of gold and take them back to Europe. They were emptying the vaults in the U.S. And our 16,000 tons went down to about 8,000 tons. It was depleted about in half until President Nixon in 1971, I think it was August of 71, said no more. And whatever ships were en route to the U.S., he told them, turn around and go back to where you came from because you're not going to get any more gold. I'm breaking the accord. I'm canceling that deal, executive order, no more. And we've been off the gold standard since 1971, and thankfully he took us off. We want to go back onto the gold standard, but in that case, it was beneficial because in a very short period of time, our vaults would have been emptied of gold. We would have absolutely nothing. Today it is reported that we have 8,000 tons of gold. So I'm thinking from 1971 to present, I don't know how much gold we've added, but when you look at the buyers of gold in the world, it's primarily China, Russia, and India in some combination, are buying virtually all of the gold that is produced, and China is even going to other sources, other countries that are willing to sell gold and buying that. I don't see the U.S. listed in anywhere that they have been accumulating gold. So it looks to me, if the data I'm looking at is correct, I assume it is, that we have not added to our gold supply. However, when you saw that earlier chart, you saw how much dollars have expanded to be in circulation. And so when I say it's backed by nothing, I don't mean it's backed by nothing because I don't know how much gold we have in reserve, but it looks like as the expanded supply of dollars are out there, new amounts of gold are not being added. While at the same time, China is buying all that can be produced both in China and elsewhere. Same with Russia, same with India. And you may say, well, if it's in high demand, why isn't the price going up? And I would tell you, I think it's manipulated. It's manipulated so that those countries can buy in at lower prices, and maybe the banks can buy in at lower prices. They're telling you not to buy it, but believe me, they're buying it. And so you can tell that it's in high demand because the markup on top of the spot price is going up. And that varies between $4 or $5 for a bullion all the way up to $10 or so for silver eagles. I'm talking about silver eagles now. So the first dollar was printed in 1935 and is actually used to be backed by silver. But if you went today and tried to get that, let's say the price is $23 and you gave that and said, I want silver, you're not going to get it. The last one, same thing, you're not going to get it. I go back to the 1860s. The 1860s was a Civil War. Now, this is not about a political statement about the Confederacy. I'm not dealing with that at all. I'm trying to make a point about currency. So the Confederate States were formed in started around 1861 when the Civil War began, and they printed their own currency. They printed their currency and exchanged it with their citizens for silver and gold. And so they used that to finance the war. They probably also obtained some US dollars or Union dollars at the same time, but they had to finance their war effort. They were basically they weren't a country yet, they were a group of states, and so they printed their own money in order to finance their war efforts. On this currency it says that this is redeemable if we sign a peace treaty. And what that means is we basically win. We win the right to become a sovereign nation and to secede from the United States or the Union. And but it's conditional. So in other words, this currency is backed by nothing, and it's conditional on winning the war or signing a peace treaty. And it's redeemable, if you read the fine print, it's redeemable in stocks and bonds. In other words, paper is redeemable by more paper. There's nothing behind it. There's never, and in some cases they had to pay interest rates that went from 6% to 8%. I found in some of them that they contained interest-bearing notes. And the closer they got to the end of the war, the higher the interest rate. And the further out they would potentially redeem them. And then I have some more. And they were issued by the Confederate States of America, which was based in Richmond, and banks and cities and states all issued currency to finance their debt. And here's some other examples issued by states, and one is by a banking company, and so I have a collection, and so in some cases it's cities, states, and banks. And they all have this clause, redeemable in stocks and bonds if and when we win the war, in so many words. So what is the point of showing you this? The point of this is to say, here we are today. Is it really any different when you think about it? It's just paper. It has no intrinsic value. And all of this paper, it may have a collector value. And so because they're not making more of it, you know, it's not authentic ones, it's redeemable, or it's not redeemable for anything of value other than its collector value. So after the war, 1865, it became basically worthless. And so here we are today. So I think about this, and I think of the parallel today, and you think, today the currency is really not worth anything unless you and I agree that it's worth something. If we agree that if I give you dollars and you accept those in exchange for goods and services, then that has value. As soon as you don't accept what I'm offering in dollars, it has no value. It's worthless. It's a piece of paper, just like these are pieces of paper. And whether it says I'm going to redeem it with more paper or I'm going to put interest on there with more paper, it's still paper. So this goes back a long ways. And I won't go through the history of currency, but I've read a lot about it. It's very interesting to me how all of the countries, all of the civilizations prior to our civilization have all, the currency has all collapsed. It's all collapsed because they reverted to, they either filled it with filler, which is usually lead, copper, nickel, non-precious metals, or they went to paper. I do want to tell one thing because it's on my mind. I think it was when Kublai Khan was he was I think the nephew of Genghis Khan. He was the emperor in China. And so I think it was the 1200s. And Marco Polo was coming from Italy. He'd been a merchant from Venice. And so he was traveling over the known world. And so he traveled to China to sell the goods that he had to sell from Italy. And he goes to China and realized that, and he's used to dealing in gold and silver, and he realized that they were not dealing in gold and silver. What Kublai Khan did, as the emperor of China at that time, is that this sounds weird, but you can read about it, they were breaking the bark off of the mulberry trees and writing on them the inscription that this is currency. This is Chinese currency. And he thought, this is crazy. This is crazy. This guy's going to own the world because these people are actually accepting the bark off of the mulberry trees with writing on it as currency. And he was used to dealing in gold and silver that, of course, had intrinsic value. And we laugh about that today, but how different are we than that? They're just running printing presses. Actually, it's gotten worse. We're not only running printing presses, we only do that to replace currency. We expand currency digitally. We just hit a button, or somebody hits a button in the Federal Reserve, and poof, $1 trillion appears in our economy. It's all digital. You can't go get it in dollars, and you certainly can't get it in precious metals. It's worse than Kublai Khan writing the currency value on a piece of mulberry bark. Think about it. So the reason I show this is to just show how transitory currency is. Paper currency that we rely on is worse than this. It's digital, which means it can disappear by the trillions of dollars like that. It can be created that quickly, and that's what they do. It's not politicians, it's the Federal Reserve. And so I hope I don't get banned from YouTube for saying that, but that's the truth. I thought I'd put this cartoon in. I thought it was appropriate. Worst case scenario, the Fed saves us, right? Yeah, right. I'm not so sure about that. Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I will answer them. Thank you for watching.